Hi everyone. I wish that I was there with you, but I am not. This is just a reminder that whenever we have a substitute, if I receive a good note from the sub, then you will be rewarded for that positive behavior. So it's just a little reminder to keep that up. Today's date is February 2nd, so go ahead and put that down. Make sure you have your name, and then I want you to write your central question, which is how do I find simple interest question mark. Okay, so what is the simple interest formula? It is I equals PRT. The I in this formula stands for interest, and interest is an amount of money. It is the amount of money earned on an investment or the amount of money owed on a loan. So kind of like the example that you saw in the slides from today. So interest can be a good thing or it can be like a negative thing. What does the P stand for? So it represents principal. And you're going to spell that like the principal of a school, like Dr. SJ. And this is the initial amount of money. So like either the initial amount of money in your savings account or like the initial amount of money that you're borrowing, like before the interest. The R stands for rate, and it is written as a percent. But when you are plugging it into this formula, you're going to need to change it to a decimal. But the good thing is that we already know how to do that. T stands for time, and this is in years. So if we're typically going to be given time in years. So it'll be like over the course of 3 years or 6 years, etc. But if we are given like months, so if they say over the course of 6 months, then you would take that amount of months that they tell you and you would divide it by 12 because there were 12 months in a year, and you would write that decimal into your formula as your time. So let's go ahead and get started. So you invest $350, that's your P because that's your initial amount of money, at 6%. Okay, that is our rate. Before we do anything, let's go ahead and change that to a decimal. So I'm going to write 6% again. I'm going to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left, and it becomes 0 and 6 hundredths, or you can just say 0.06. And then our time, our amount of time, is 4 years. So I'm going to put a T right there. Okay, so our formula is I equals PRT. Whoops. And we're going to go ahead and plug in the information that we have. So we have P, which is 350. We have our rate, and we're going to write the decimal, so 0.06. We have time, which is 4. So once you plug those things into your calculator, into Desmos, you're going to get I equals 84. So that's $84. So I equals $84. And so that means by that $350 just sitting in that account for 4 years at 6% interest rate, then you're going to gain $84. Okay, so this next example is kind of like talking about debt, like when you are borrowing a loan. So you borrow $4,872 at 10%. Okay, so let's go ahead and label some things. So this $4,872, that is our P, that's like our initial amount. This 10%, that's our rate. We will change it to a decimal in a minute. You guys should feel very comfortable with doing that. And you do this for 5 years, so that's your time. So let's go ahead and plug these things into our formula. So our principal is 4,872. We cannot write our 10% like that. We need to change it to a decimal. So when we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left, we get 0.10 or 0.1. You can just put it like that. And then I need to put a 5 in parentheses because that's the amount of time. So when I multiply all of these things together in Desmos, I am going to get I equals, and put my dollar sign, $2,436. All right. So for this next one, we're going to do the same exact thing. This one's going to be just a little bit harder. Okay, so you invest $10,000, so that's our initial amount, our principal, at 4.5%. We need to move that decimal point 2 spaces to the left, so we're going to get 0.045. And then it says for 6 months. So this is not in years. So what you need to do, and let me just label this as our R because that was our rate. 6 is our time. So what we need to do is we need to take that 6 and we need it to be our numerator. And then 12 is going to be our denominator because there are 12 months in a year. And so our decimal for time is 0.5. Okay, so now let's plug this stuff into our formula. So we're going to get I equals 10,000 times 0.045 times 0.5. And when you plug that into the calculator for I, you're going to get $225. Okay, so now we're going to do total cost. Find the amount of interest using I equals PRT, then add the interest to the principal amount. That's what we're going to do to find total costs. Go ahead and flip to the back. Okay, so we're only going to do one example where we're finding the total amount, and it says you invest $450, so that is our principal amount, at 7%, so that's our rate, for 5 years, that's our T. What is your total amount? Let's go ahead and write I equals PRT. Okay, our P is 450. My R I cannot write like that, so I need to change it to a decimal, and when you do, you get 0.07. And then our time is 5 years. When you plug that into the calculator, you are going to get I equals $57.50. That is not our answer, right? Because it's asking for the total amount. So what we need to do now is we need to take the initial amount, which is the principal. We need to take the principal and we need to add the interest. So we need to do 450 plus 57.50, and we're going to get $607.50. So that is our answer. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a heads up that you're not really going to see questions like the next 3 that we do. You're not really going to see many of them in the future. However, you are an advanced class. You can handle these advanced questions. They're just like bumping it up a level like you would in a video game, okay? So you can handle it, but I don't want you to stress about them because you're not really going to get tested on questions like this. So sometimes they give you like the interest amount, but you're missing something else. So for example, for our first one, we're going to be missing the principal amount, the initial amount going in. So we're going to kind of solve it like we would an equation. And I know you guys loved that unit on equations so much. So I know you're so excited to hear this. So our question is, how much was invested? So we're trying to figure out I after 3 years. 3 years is our T at 6%, which is our rate. If you earned $46. And so I want to correct myself real quick. I think I said that we're trying to find our I. No, we're trying to find P. We're trying to find like how much was originally invested. So based off of what I just identified, we need to fill this information into our formula. So we have a 46 for I. We don't know P, that's what we're solving for. Our rate is 6%, so that is 0.06. And then our time is 3 years. And then we're going to solve this like we would an equation. So you're going to multiply 0.06 and 3, and you're going to get 0.18. And I'm going to put that in front of P, kind of like as my coefficient. Okay, and we want to know what P is equal to. So we need to divide by 0.18. And so we get P equals, and I'm going to put a dollar sign because we're talking about money, $255.56. So that is our principal amount. That's the amount of money that was originally invested. Okay, next we're going to find time, T. So how long did you have a loan if you owe $315 after investing $500 at 7%? So you owe $315 because that is the interest amount that you owe. The initial amount that you invested was $500, so that's your P. And then your rate is 7%, and we know that we're going to have to eventually write that as a decimal. We don't know the time, okay, so that's why they're saying how long, question mark. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in the information that we do know, and that we know that the interest is $315. We know that the principal amount is $500. We know that the rate is 7%, so we're going to write that as 0.07, or if you're really fancy, 7/100ths, right? And then we're going to put our T. Okay, so when you plug 500 times 0.07 in the calculator, you're going to get 35. So that's 35T. We'll have the 35 as our coefficient. And then lastly, we want T. We don't want 35T. We want 1T. So we're going to divide by 35, divide by 35, and we get, and I don't need to put a dollar sign in front of this, right? Because we're talking about time. So we get T equals 9, so that means 9 years. All right, guys, we have one last problem, and unfortunately, I think that this one is probably the hardest one, but I know that you can definitely handle it. So this one you're finding R, the rate. So what was the interest rate if you owed $65 on a $300 loan? So 65 is the interest amount. $300 is the principal amount because that's the initial amount on a $300 loan after 2 years. So that's our time. So we're going to go ahead and plug everything in. And so our I is 65. Our P is 300. We don't have our R, that's what we're trying to find. And then our T is 2. Okay, so we're gonna, I know that they're kind of like sandwiched between the R, but we're gonna multiply the 300 and the 2. And so that's gonna give us 600. And we're gonna use that as our coefficient for R. And we want to know R, so we need to divide by 600. Okay, so when we do, what we're going to get is we're going to get 0.1083 repeating, and that is R. But we're not ready to write that as our final answer because rate is written as a percent. And right now, this is a decimal. So I want you to write on your paper because you're not going to understand why you're doing this if you don't write it on your paper. So please, please, please write it on your paper. I want you to write change to a percent. And so how we change a decimal to a percent is we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right this time. I know you're so used to singing to the left, okay? So as a percent, our rate is 10.83 repeating percent. And that's it. So that was the hardest one, and you got through it. So good job. But like I said, most of the problems that you'll see in the future and the ones that you'll be tested on will be like the ones that we did on the front page and at the top of this back page. So good job. Keep up the good work, and I will see you in the future. Bye.